Okay, well it is 1 o'clock Eastern, so let's get started. My name is Ann Fannin, and on behalf of the CAFCE board, I'd like to welcome you to the fourth of a series of webinars on the federal government's new Student Work Integrated Learning program. Today we're joined by Gina Van Dalen, who's the Executive Director of ITAG Talent of the Information Technology Association of Canada. Gina will provide us with a high-level overview of ITAG's SWILP program, and then will be available to answer your questions. ITAG was the first of the industry associations to reach out to CAFCE, and we're really pleased to have established a relationship and a dialogue with them as we explore ways to support students with quality work integrated learning opportunities. A few administrative notes which will be very familiar to those of you that have joined us on previous calls. In order to ensure the best audio quality for all of our attendees, we have muted the phone lines. So if you have a question during the webinar, please ask it by using the chat feature in the bottom left of your screen. I'll collect the questions and then direct them to Gina after the presentation component is finished. We are recording this webinar, and we will make it available on the CAFCE website for anyone who is unable to join us today or who would like to refer to its content at a later date. And last but not least, if new questions about the program arise or we are unable to answer all of your questions today, please do submit them to cafce@cafce.ca, and we'll forward them along to ITAG. One more note about questions. So I'm currently working on an FAQ based on the answers that we've received in previous webinars. I hope to have it ready for everyone at the beginning of next week. In particular, there seem to be a number of questions about eligibility that are coming up every single webinar. There are still some areas of ambiguity, but I thought before we begin it might be helpful for all of the listeners to just provide a summary on who we know is eligible for the program at this moment in time. So in order to be eligible, students must be Canadian, so that's citizens, permanent resident, or refugee status, registered in a STEM or business program with a WIL component at a post-secondary institution in Canada. So the program is not currently open to international students or students in WIL programs outside of STEM, even if they are working in roles which may be based in STEM or business. Industry associations can then set further restrictions on the types of positions that they'll fund, and they're responsible for determining if a particular WIL opportunity meets their guidelines. A couple of other notes: the position cannot be funded by any other federal wage subsidy program. And we're currently seeking clarity on whether not-for-profit organizations, including education and healthcare, would qualify for SWILP funding. So at this moment in time, we'd recommend that you focus your efforts on connecting students with employers in industry. As I mentioned earlier, that FAQ should be available shortly, and we will continue to evolve it as we get more information. So with that said, I will pass things off to Gina in order to give us an overview of ITAG's SWILP program.
Great. Thanks, Anne. I'm just trying to get back to my app to see what's showing on the screen right now. Sorry. Oh, I think I lost it. Well, I guess if you could maybe start with the first slide in my deck.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, so welcome. Thank you for inviting me to present to you about our Career Ready program. As Anne mentioned, I'm the Executive Director for ITAG Talent. So second slide, ITAG Talent overview. Yeah, just quickly, for those of you not familiar with ITAG, I'll just give you the quick elevator pitch. ITAG is a business association for ICT. We've been around for about 50 years. I think we even started off as an office supply company, or an organization that represented office supply companies and really moved from, I guess, staplers to AI, and have been around for about 50 years. We currently have about 350 members. Most are in ICT, and the majority, around 75%, are SMEs. We are looking at broadening our membership to include non-ICT companies and attracting organizations that are large users of ICT, such as banks and retailers and manufacturers. Sort of up until, I guess, 2014, ITAG's core business really focused on advocacy and networking And in 2014, we merged with what was then called the Canadian Coalition for Tomorrow's ICT Skills, or CCICT, which became ITAG Talent, and brought with it sort of two assets, programs. One was CareerMatch, a high school outreach program, and the other one was BTM, Business Technology Management, which was introduced in 2009 at the undergraduate level. Since the development of the BTM in 2009, it really has impacted thousands of graduates. It's really a program that resonates with industry. Placement rates are significantly high, and we have currently around 23 post-secondary institutions across Canada that offer a BTM, with applications for BTM sort of rising, at least 10% year over year. So it's been a real success story for ITAG. Then this year, of course, we introduced our Career Ready program, and we're currently working on proposals to expand enrollment in both AI, actually, and cybersecurity. So next slide. So ITAG Talent strategic priority areas. Yeah, so a quick snapshot of our strategic priority areas. We continue to advocate on behalf of our industry on talent-related issues and devising programs that deal with the talent shortage and skills mismatch that not only develops and expands the ICT employment pool, but also ensures that we get more people interested in ICT careers through our CareerMatch program and keep them in those job roles when they're there. So that's just a quick snapshot. So the Career Ready program, as you likely all know by now, ESDC has provided grants to 5 organizations to help them roll out their SWIL program. The majority of funding, it's around 70%, is dedicated to wage subsidies, and organizations can get up to $7,000 per placement. Excuse me. Funding is available up to 16 weeks. We focused our program around business and technology programs such as BTM, but also BTM-like programs. So, for example, a Bachelor of Commerce with a Management Information Systems, or MIS, programs essentially that combine business and technology. So that's, it's not sort of restricted to just BTM. And the traditional and emerging sort of computer science, technology, and engineering type programs. We also have an emphasis on cybersecurity, but as you'll see on the next slide, the target for those are low, and that was really based on sort of research that we did on the supply of students in those types of programs. There aren't as many as sort of traditional computer science, computer systems technology, and what have you. So we are, just as a point of information, working with ESDC to increase those numbers, and hope to have some good news around that in the coming year, and we'll definitely keep you posted on that. The other deliverable under SWILP is the need to really look at sustainability strategy. So, it's great. $73 million apparently was dedicated to launch this program for 4 years, and then after that, we don't really know. So we're really in the process of setting up a steering committee to help us formulate what that could look like. And so if you're interested in participating in that, please let me know. Because it's a very important part of our project. So next slide. Just to give you a quick snapshot on the placements, the year-over-year placements that go from May to May for the next 4 years. And as you may have heard, funding for the program has only been guaranteed for the first 2 years, and the results of those 2 years will determine further funding. We have secured 1,192 placements and had to identify the areas where the placements would be and set targets. So although the funding is great, as you can see, the numbers of placements are low, especially if you consider that placements are available nationally across all CAFCE schools. So we have set caps for each province to ensure fair distribution of the placements, and I can share those caps with you if you're interested after the call. We've also provided targets around certain demographics, and I guess the easiest on the list, and that's why I've highlighted them, are female placements. The others are much more difficult, and it's almost impossible, as we found out, to place first-year students. and people self-identify. So the other sort of red categories that you see on the slide there are difficult to measure. Plus, we really can't influence those numbers as we don't promote program enrollment. So it's really relying on existing enrollments. And also, employers won't pay a person more just because they are in that target demographic. So the incentive is to be honest with you, a little bit artificial, but we had to put them in there, and we are tracking them, of course, as well. So on the next slide, career-ready other deliverables. So in addition to processing the wage subsidies, of course, we also agreed to expand interest and uptake by employers in WIL and increasing the available jobs pool, and also help raise the interest by students in the benefits of WIL. So for employers, especially SMEs, which is our target group, we want to make it easy for them to understand what a WIL placement is and can do for them. So we provide them with information sharing, toolkits, webinars, events, creating an information-rich website and how-to information and benefits and practices of WIL. A mobile app is in the works to make it easy to sign up anywhere, and develop a national conference on WIL and ICT skills development and workshops for students in WIL to expose them to entrepreneurs to learn more about the skill sets you need and consider working for a startup instead of a big bank or a retailer, which sometimes is a student's first choice. Excuse me. So yes, next slide, please. So just a bit about our rollout. As you may know, we started off with a consortium in Ontario with 4 schools, which really allowed us to test our matching technology, and more on that in a minute, and to get our initial placements in as well. The program was launched really late. So approval was in May, so we really missed an opportunity. So we really centralized our placement efforts. So starting in October, so next week, I guess in a few days, we will go nationwide with all CAFCE schools. One issue we had some concerns about is the ability for CoOp programs to scale up. Most of you have minimum GPAs, and in order to scale, there needs to be some flexibility around the GPA to allow more students into the program. So for the coming year, where we see our sort of net new, if you will, coming from are those students in your CoOp programs that can find a job. I think there's always a certain percentage that you have a hard time finding a job for, and we will work on identifying more jobs for you from organizations that are not on your employer's list yet. The numbers for next year are still relatively low, as you just saw on the chart, so I believe that we can meet those working directly with you. The process, excuse me, to attract enrollment for summer 2019 sort of starts fall 2018, and we should by that time have seen a demonstrated increase in the employer's interest in WIL, which would then allow you to look at maybe reducing your GPA if possible to get some more students into the program. And I realize that this may be challenging because you're not guaranteed an unlimited supply of more employers. For example, what's happening with the Toronto Financial Service Alliance, which is guaranteeing something like 10,000 placements over 4 years. So we will really have to look at how we can scale up using CAFCE schools as our source of student supply. Next slide, please. So in terms of roles and responsibilities for ITAG, we will start off with 2 placement officers this year. One is serving Ontario, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and another one serving the eastern provinces and Quebec. We will likely add another placement officer in year 3 and year 4, just to handle the larger volume of placements that we're looking at. So our role is really to cultivate employers and developing word terms, as it says on the slides, word term opportunities. So very much working on your behalf with your process to get more jobs into the pipeline. We'll help you organize local events, work with you to monitor student progress and success, and we, through our Magnet platform, will maintain a database of employers and student placements. And of course, we'll process the wage subsidies. Now, on that point of wage subsidies, because our target numbers are a bit elastic in that if we don't meet our target demographics, those additional funding dollars can be moved into the sort of other bucket that you saw that funds sort of non-target demographic positions. So we have a little bit more flexibility there. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a sip of water. So yeah, on the Career Ready slide 9, the Magnet platform essentially. So as I mentioned, we're using Magnet, which is an innovative technology essentially that was developed and incubated through the Digital Media Zone in Ryerson, and it really has grown into quite a mature platform, and it allows us to connect employers with students. Now most of you don't use Magnet, and we have found a way to ensure that Magnet interacts with either your Orbis or Simplicity system, or if you don't, through an API essentially, or by using a manual process. And I'll review in the next slides how that works. So essentially, employers would sign up, post their job. The job will be posted on Orbis Simplicity directly, or you'll receive, excuse me, the job to post on your own job board. The student applies, and you maintain control of that activity, which was really important when we started talking to our consortium partners. The employer then employs the student and will need to complete a placement agreement with ITAG so we can control the numbers. We will make it clear to the employer that that funding is limited and is really assigned on a first-come, first-served basis. And if they're relying on the funding, they should not make a formal commitment with the student until ITAG sort of quote-unquote approves the wage subsidy. So yeah, next slide. Yeah, so there's quite a bit of information on that slide. So I'll just recap, and I'll send you after the meeting the actual 2 documents so you can see what the workflow is like. We've reviewed the process with Ryerson, Centennial, Sheridan, and Seneca. Only Ryerson uses Magnet, and the other schools were all satisfied that the process would work. So I'll just quickly go through sort of the process. So in terms of the employer signs up, this is the manual process. If you don't have Orbis or excuse me, Simplicity, and also the API between Magnet and Orbis is currently being worked on. So we hope to have that in place. Well, it should have been in place actually now, but as technology goes, there's always a delay. So we're hoping to have that done by the end of October. But so in the meantime, we're using a manual workflow. The employer signs up through a portal. It says Magnet, but it's actually ITAG will verify the employer and the job posting that it's all sort of legit. The posting is then forwarded to the CAFCE schools via email. You manually post on your CoOp job board, and the posting will have a link in it, basically pointing the student to the ITAG landing page, and a second link to the job post. And the employer will check the account and see sort of a queue of students who applied, and if there's a profile match, which is what the technology does, it lists the top match candidates. And then the employer will see the resume, the employer contacts the student, and the student reports the interview to the CoOp office. So that's the manual process. So if you just go to the next slide, essentially it's the same with the main exception for sort of item sort of point 3 and 4 of the posting that we typically forward to CAFCE schools via email. That will become an automated process. And the school still has the opportunity to approve the posting before they actually put it on Orbis. Everything else basically stays the same. So that's a bit on the Magnet side. Excuse me. Now, in terms of sort of next steps, we're about, as I said, to hire a will placement officer for the Eastern Provinces and Quebec. Jan Hall, who some of you have already met, is on board, and we'll start reaching out to everyone starting next week. Our focus will be on summer and fall 2018 enrollments. Both placement officers and the third one coming on board in year 3 We'll work actively on outreach activities and developing marketing and outreach collateral. And we also would like to work with CAFCE directly to really fine-tune our toolkits, website, the mobile app to really make it most user-friendly for students, but also for CAFCE schools. And I think that's my last. Yep, that's it.
Great. Thanks so much, Gina. I was just unmuting myself, so hopefully you can hear me. Yep. Okay, so we have received a couple of questions that came in as you were going through your presentation. So I will start with those ones, and then we'll see what other questions come in. So the first question perhaps would be addressed as you scale up across the country. So there was actually mention of the fact that in Alberta there are a number of computer engineering students that are available, but there are sometimes employers that would want to hire students in Ontario. Ontario companies would want those students because of the tax credits. So the question is there a way that Alberta students could be promoted for these positions?
Well, I think it would have to be made clear through the job posting. Mm-hmm. Where the employer basically identifies where students can come from. You guys are more familiar with job postings. Typically, a location is specified, I assume. Mm-hmm. But if they can be attracted from other provinces, I think unless you specify a particular location where only those students qualify from, then I think that would be clear from a job description, wouldn't it not be?
Yeah, I think so, and I think, and we can go back to Corey to see if we're addressing the question, but I think as your opportunities expand across the country, then there are still some provincial tax credits, and those are realities that are going to exist that are not equitable across the country, but now there is an opportunity to, say, turn to those Alberta employers and say, now there's some federal funding to assist in hiring these students. So that's personally how I would address it, and right. To be able to just highlight that these positions are available across the country, which is perhaps a segue into the notion of provincial quotas, which is another question that has just come in. I think that's very appealing to us as CAFCE members. We're really excited to see these positions available to students across the country. Can you give us a sense of sort of the provincial quotas or the rough breakdown across the country?
Sure. So we sort of grouped them into Ontario, a bucket for BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, Quebec, and the eastern provinces. So to give you an example for year 2 for proposed placements, for Ontario for BTM or BTM-like programs, we have to sort of go across the various sort of areas that we have identified in terms of programs. So BTM, we have a quota of 20 for Ontario, computer science 22, computer systems technology 22, and cybersecurity 5. For BC and Alberta and Saskatchewan, those numbers remain the same. Quebec, we have 10 for BTM, 10 for computer science, 10 for computer systems technology, so the 2-year diploma programs, 5 for cybersecurity. And for Eastern, we have on that same level BTM 5, because there's there's only one BTM program in the Eastern provinces, but there are of course MIS programs. It's about 5 for Eastern, 5 for computer science, 9 for computer systems technology, and 5 for cybersecurity. Numbers, again, really low. And you have to realize they have to be distributed among various schools. But we had to make it fair and equitable for everyone involved. And we had to set those caps per program, but also per province, and try to make it as fair as possible based on the sort of the geographical area and folks that were in those provinces.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's certainly challenges in trying to move towards that equity, but I think we all really appreciate such intentionality. So I have a couple of questions that are operational in terms of winter wage subsidies and spring wage subsidies. So let's start with winter, which is, are you sold out for the upcoming winter? Have you filled your quota for winter 2018 placements?
We're still working on that. Jen unfortunately couldn't make it today. She is working with the Ontario schools to fill those quotas. So I can probably get back to you after this call on Monday, actually, when she's back, to just give you an update on where we are at with the first-year placements numbers and see whether she still has is looking to fill some of those spots.
Great. That would be, I'm sure, appreciated by many. And the next question moves ahead to the summer group. The question is, when can employers start applying for subsidies for next summer?
You can start applying now. So from October, it's my understanding, from October to January-ish, you actively start looking to fill positions for the summer placements. So Jan and of course our new placement officer will in the eastern provinces will actively start to engage to make sure that they fill the spots. And then for the winter of the fall of 2018, that will start in January and basically will run throughout the year because that's a longer cycle essentially that we have there.
Perfect. And the next question is, can an employer apply for more than one subsidy for a given start term? So let's say they have 3 positions for the May 2018 work term.
Nope. Unfortunately not. I wish we had.
Okay.
That's a simple answer. There's 16 weeks and it's 1 placement per organization. What they're really trying to do is promote workplace integrated learning to small, medium-sized organizations, and they're trying to touch as many of those as they can. So we really have to limit the funding, unfortunately. Yeah. Right.
Yep. Fair enough. Yeah. The next question is a similar question, but with respect to longer work terms. So if it was an 8-month work term, could an employer apply for a subsidy for the first 4 months and then reapply for the subsequent 4 months?
No, there's a 16-month cap. 16-week
cap.
16-week cap on all placements. Yeah, and that goes. And I'm not sure whether you heard differently from the other ones, but that seems to be. I think the aviation aerospace organization is the only one that has an exception there, where they have a 1-year type of arrangement, essentially, where students are on the job for a year and then 1 year in class. But that's a whole different program that they've organized. But the other ones have all 16-week caps.
Right. So I do think there's some ambiguity in terms of process across the industry associations right now, but that's something that we are in continuous conversation with respect to ESDC. And I know right now the partner schools listening on the phone have a lot of questions. I think we're coming to some more clarity, and so we'll say stay tuned. And if you hear of things that seem odd or very inconsistent, please reach out to us and let us know, and we are more than happy to raise those in any way, shape, or form. So we're also getting a couple of questions from CAFCE member schools in terms of connecting directly to you. So how do we get our name on the contact list for the job postings? How do we know that you have the right, that ITAG has the correct contact to send postings to post-secondary schools? Can you give us a little bit of a sense of how you are connecting into the different schools?
Your contacts, of course, are Jan Hall if you're in one of the provinces that are under her responsibility. And in the meantime, you can connect directly with me for the other provinces.
Great.
In terms of connecting with, we will be, as I said, starting next week, connect with typically the director or a like position within the various co-op departments across the schools. So there will be a wide distribution going out with the information, and we will continue to actively work with all the CAFCE schools for Jan, it's about 50. I think I counted the other day.
Yes.
So it's quite a Herculean task. But we're setting up, list servers and making sure there's ongoing communication with the various schools about the program, really making sure that we have active engagement with all of them.
Perfect. That's great. And so just to follow on that, we certainly are passing messages again as well throughout the CAFCE membership, and I think the best way that we can sort of coordinate these efforts is to have these kinds of conversations where we know what's happening at the different industry association levels, and then of course we will have our regular communication channels with the CAFCE members as well. So thanks very much, Gina.
And it would probably help Jan as well, rather than having to look up the names. If you could maybe provide us with your membership contact list, essentially, then we can start that communication more effectively, probably, and quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can certainly say if there's anyone that for any reason wouldn't be interested in having that communication to please let us know. But we can certainly take advantage of those pre-established connections to try and move things along as quickly as possible.
Great.
So a couple of questions that are process-based questions as well. One of them relates to students. The question is, do students have to qualify somehow, or can they apply as long as they're not an international student? And I think perhaps if you could sort of just talk us through the process of an employer getting the subsidy approved and what connection points there would be with students as well, that might help address that specific question.
Yeah, so definitely that's correct. No international students, unfortunately. I think there's something in the works that they might be looking at, but for now it's just Canadian residents, as you mentioned, and permanent residents, what have you. So in terms of process, we're using the Magnet platform essentially. So yes, students can apply. They have to, of course, fit the parameters of the program. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide whether or not it's a good fit. The employer, of course, will connect with the students. The student then has to, inform you basically that they have an interview. But ultimately, it's up to you to decide whether or not the type of role the employer is providing is matching with the learning outcomes that you're looking for in a work term, in a student's work term. So we have pretty much a hands-off role. Once you give us the all clear, essentially, then we ask the employer to fill out the placement form. We check whether there is still availability in terms of funding, and we make it very clear up front that this is on a first-come, first-served basis, and if they're really relying on the funding, they should not be making commitments to students until they actually have an all clear from ITAG. So that's sort of a process that we have to manage carefully. But the approval process, we didn't want to really, we're not content experts in that area. You are, so we really have to rely on you whether or not this is a good fit for the student and for the employer, of course. Great,
thank you. Just to follow along that, I'm really pleased to report that we have an employer listening on our call today, and she wants to know how she could go about accessing SWILP and connecting with ITAG.
Go to the portal. Go to our website, and if you meet the criteria, if you're eligible, just go to the portal. It's a fairly straightforward process to sign up through the Magnet portal. You basically fill in your employer details, you fill in your job requirements, and as soon as the job is posted, it is going to be sent off to the schools that you have indicated, and then the process can start essentially.
Great. And perhaps a good follow-up to that question, are employers obligated to post through Magnet, or could they post directly to a school once they have funding approval?
They could, yeah, they could. Ideally, we try to keep them within our community, within the portal community. But if you find a match, and if it's a small, medium-sized organization, and then yes, you can definitely directly use the job boards that is used by the schools.
Great. And there's a question as to whether or not you have any marketing collateral that we could share with our employers to tell them about the program.
We do. We have a handy-dandy brochure that we have developed. So I just have to, there's some tweaks that need to be made to it, but that should be available. I'm just trying to look at my calendar. Our graphic designer actually is on vacation, unfortunately, but that will be available the second week of October, and I will. It's a PDF document, so I will send that on to you, and then you can forward it on to CAFCE members, and they can use that for their outreach purposes.
Great, that's fantastic. There's a question here, Gina. Could you please summarize employer criteria for eligibility? Yeah,
they can be found on our website. So it's a small or medium-sized organization, and the criteria for that, although they are 0 to 500 employees, are a little soft, to be honest with you. As we've been talking to some of the other grant recipients, it can be the large blue chip organizations. That's not what this program was built for or developed for. It really was to address smaller, medium-sized organizations. So as long as you're not a blue chip organization, you would qualify. The ability to offer a minimum of 12-week work placement, ability to offer a position in either a BTM or BTM-like program, and then a computer science, computer systems technology, computer engineering, or related areas. So basically combining programs in computing, computer science, but also those that combine business and technology. The work-term student cannot be an existing employee or have any previous working history with the organization. So that whole issue of net new, that's definitely, we're sort of looking at incremental growth essentially. The term net new is a little bit hard to define, but we really try to sort of enforce that. And the person must not be filling a position that's left vacant due to some dispute or layoff or sort of other occurrence that really displaces another worker. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would just say I've had a quick look at the website, and I commend you on the clarity behind the criteria. I hope we can move towards that sort of clarity for all of the SWILP programs. So please do take a look at ITAG's website at the Career Ready program. And then, of course, if you have questions, I'm sure you can direct them to Jan and Gina.
Yeah, and just a clarification, the website content will be slightly different next week because we're now going national, and so the reference to the consortium probably will be gone, hopefully by next week, depending on my availability for the website coordinator, but that is something that you just have to keep in mind. This is a national program now.
Right. Great. Thank you. So there are a couple of questions about the matching process, and I'm going to try and put them in a logical order as I read over them. So one of the questions relates to employers. So an employer has reached out to you. They have a position that you believe qualifies for this program. They put it in the system. Do they select which schools they want to have it posted at?
That is something that we are working on with Magnet, actually. So we will have the list of CAFCE schools listed there, and the employer has an opportunity to identify if they wish to have this go to specific schools. Okay. If not, then you can go, all of the above type of thing. But that hopefully, again, will be in place the first week of October.
Great. And is there an option for CoOp staff and CoOp schools to log into Magnet as well?
To log in terms of seeing which employers are there?
That's a great question. Perhaps we'll send that back. Gwen, if you can let us know what you would want to be seeing to log into Magnet, that would be really helpful. And there are a couple of questions, let's see here, about the matching process. And let's see here. So one of the questions says, could a student put their name in Magnet in the database in advance, so not specifically related to a position. And then the other question is just a question of clarification about the match process. So,
so
is
on
that
your first, on your first
question,
sorry,
go ahead.
Yes, they can sign up anytime. They will just, and there are positions perhaps in the system that they look at that they don't want to apply for, but then they're in the system. If they see a specific link on the Orbis job board, on the Simplicity job board, or your own job board, they can just click the link and it will automatically take them to that job. The other option for them, of course, is to do a search on the platform. So yes,
Right.
that is possible.
Okay, let's see here. So, and I think you've just addressed this, but I think we are still conceptualizing how the process will work with Magnet and our own job boards. And I'm going to read the question, and I'll tell you what I think the answer is, and then you can tell me if I answered correctly. So the question is a job posting on the Magnet site and the student applies there, and the employer looks at applications on that site, or would it be pushed through to a school's job posting site? And if I'm understanding correctly, the positions will be in the Magnet platform. Eventually, there's a hope that we'll be able to push them out to our own individual Orbis or Simplicity installations, but then there would be a link in that job posting to go back for the student to apply. Is that correct?
That is correct. And in the meantime, it's the manual process that I referred to earlier, where you will have to post the job basically on your job board.
Right. Okay. And so just as a reminder for those of you that are joining us later in the call, we do have this call recorded, and we will have the slides up on the CAFCE website. So if you want to go back and look at that workflow, you can have an opportunity to do so at the end of this call.
Yeah, and I'll send you the two documents, the PDF documents as well, that you can distribute. Those are a little bit larger.
Wonderful. Thanks. There's a question here. Do you think that some of the jobs that you are approving may also qualify for funding under the ICTC program?
Oh, yes. Yeah, ICTC and the Toronto Financial Service Alliance and BioTalent. It's definitely going to be a bit competitive to some extent. There's going to just be some overlap. If you're looking for a software engineer, all the organizations, ICTC, ITAG, BioTalent, Toronto Financial Service Alliance, they're looking for that same software engineer, right? So there is going to be a bit of competition, but hopefully we are able collectively to sort of raise the profile of the importance of will, specifically in the SME community, that we can get more organizations to submit positions. It's sort of a low risk type of, and sort of low risk and low investment type of, especially if you're in Ontario, type of opportunity. So I think it's really a great way for small, medium-sized organizations to sort of do some reaching out and finding out that it's an easy talent solution for them. Basically, if you hire someone, especially if you're sort of a fourth-year student or a third-year student even, it's a great opportunity for them to showcase not only the organization, but get them into your talent pipeline and really demonstrate that you're a great company to work for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Gina. So there are some interesting questions here. One of the questions that has just come in relates to the regional CAFCE, and it's a question of does that refer to the location of the work term or the region that the student is from? So is it the employer location or the student location?
Employer location.
Yeah. Okay, great. And again, some more questions about the matching process. I'm thinking there might be great value in us developing a document to go along with your workflow. I'll pass this one along. one of our schools says we do not use a rank and match process. How are top match resumes determined by the software?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer to that, unfortunately, other than this has been a technology in development for at least 8 years. Started off as Who plus You. I'm not sure whether some of you are familiar with that. And has gone through significant rounds of development. They have a 35 person development team working on that right now. If you want to know specifically how that technology works, how it identifies top matches, I can maybe put you in touch with Mark Patterson, who is the executive director of Magnet, who can probably explain much better than I'm doing how that technology actually works.
Mm-hmm. And Gina, I'm really appreciating both this conversation and the questions that are coming in. Some of the CAFCE member schools may already know that we are anticipating similar workflows for other industry associations. I believe ITAG is further ahead than some of the other industry associations in terms of that process with Magnet, but we do anticipate that there's going to be some standardization of processes through this Magnet Orbis connection. So it's really valuable for us to work through these processes at this point in time. We will take this offline, put together that sort of FAQ document related to the process. Take your questions as they come in and use those to help us both inform the process development but also the responses in that FAQ. There are also questions because some schools do not use Orbis and they don't use Simplicity, and I would just share again with the membership that this is certainly something that we have raised with ESDC and that they are very tuned to, and that they are looking for options for member schools to log into this portal as it's developed without needing to have an installation of Orbis or Simplicity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, as I said, right now the process is manual. Once we go to Orbis, the Orbis knows which schools are working on it, or having either Simplicity or Orbis connection. And so where we don't, we will just maintain that manual process, and you will just get the link via an email.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's great. Okay, just a couple more questions that are coming in. The question is the computer systems tech the only college level that is looked at? Where would computer system engineering, technology, or programmer analyst fit? Yep,
they all fit in that same bucket.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the broader, so it's essentially any computing type program or computer science type program, and there is a wide spectrum from cybersecurity to IoT to artificial intelligence, specialization programs, for example, computer engineering. Any program basically that has a computing element would qualify.
Great, thanks for clarifying. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nope, that's okay. So there is a question that we touched on at the very beginning of the webinar, and it's that question of whether government or non-profit employers are eligible for funding. Certainly at the higher level with ESDC, we are seeking clarity on not-for-profit organizations. The federal government is not eligible, and we're not clear on education and say healthcare providers. Gina, do you have a specific ITAG response to that question?
Well, as far as we know, and you are correct, government, federal government or provincial governments or sort of quasi type of organizations would not. They're just too large. Definitely non-for-profits would qualify, especially if they're within the realm of small, medium-sized organizations.
Great, thank you for that. I think we have addressed most of the higher level questions. There was a question of the quota for cybersecurity for Ontario again. Not sure if you've got that at the ready. If not, we can loop back and answer that question after.
Yeah. So just trying to see here. So for year 2, right now, It's 5. Sorry, for year 2 it would be 5. For year 3, for Ontario it's 6, and for year 4 it's 25. Now, having said that, as I mentioned before, the government knows that there is a significant shortage of cybersecurity professionals. There's a dire need to get students into those programs, and so we're looking at 2 things with them: is increasing, first of all, the ratios for cybersecurity, and we're looking currently at around 500 over the 3 years, I guess, because it would start next year. 500 additional placements over the 3 years, but we're also looking at alternative, sort of innovative programs, similar to what, for example, as I mentioned earlier, the aviation aerospace have done, where you're really looking at quickly ramping up those types of programs with a combination of co-op plus knowledge-based programs to get more students in. So, but again, it's all very preliminary. They're just in the information gathering phase, I guess. But I know that there is definitely an awareness that there's a need to really address that area because of the significant talent shortage in that area.
That's great. Thank you for confirming that number. The last 2 notes that I have, one is something that's come up in a couple of previous webinars, and it has to do with the timing of recruitment cycles. So this is a note that some schools have students available year-round, and their employers think in 4-month cycles, and so application dates may be well in advance of what they're actually thinking about in terms of posting jobs. I think it was just mentioned as an FYI, but both for our conversation with ITAG and then sort of the broader conversations with all of the industry associations, I would say that working through rhythms and cycles of posting is certainly something that we're all striving to find the best common processes. It's fantastic to have ITAG working with CAFCE and CAFCE member schools. SWILP goes beyond co-op, so then there are a whole other series of processes and timelines, and so I think the more that we can communicate about what we currently do and look for ways to streamline that, the better. But just a note back to the membership that there are a lot of different parties involved in these SWILP programs, and so it's not always easy to find perfect timing for all programs.
Yeah, perfect timing, and even the additional complication basically is the fact that there's limited funding. So that's another whole process that needs to be managed. And if you luck out that you're number 161, if we only have 160, then we have this communication process to not lose them for the next term, and then maybe encourage them to sort of apply for the next funding cycle.
Right, that's great. So I think those are all of the questions that our members submitted. I would like to say thank you very much, Gina, for first reaching out to CAFCE very early days when SWILP was not yet officially a program, for your time today, for your willingness to work with our schools. We will take next steps in terms of reaching out to the CAFCE membership to see if there's anyone that would not be willing to have their institution forwarded directly to ITAG for either putting into the magnet system or for communications directly from you. But otherwise, we will look forward to continuing these conversations and creating these work-integrated learning opportunities for our students.
Great, and just if you just could have maybe look at slide 7 as well, would be really valuable for us as well to get some sense from your schools in terms of the flexibility that you have with your entry requirements for co-op, specifically related to GPA, where some schools have, from the discussions that we've had, a much more difficult time to move that GPA. Where others sort of look at market demand essentially and to have an easier time moving that GPA perhaps a little bit lower to attract more students. So if you could maybe ask your members to sort of give us some information around that, specifically after sort of year 2 or in year 2 actually, once we start to see that we have an overwhelming success story on our hands here, and there's employers flooding the market. We have to sort of get a sense of, is it really realistic to sort of start looking at that, so that we can start increasing basically the pool of students that we have for year 3 and 4, and not sort of rely on your existing programs pool.
Yep. We can absolutely do that. I know we've done some information collection for some of the other industry associations, so we'd be happy to do that outreach and report back as we can.
Great.
Great. Well, thanks to everyone for joining us today, and thanks again, Gina, for your time, and we'll look forward to continuing the conversations.
Sounds good. Thank you,
Have
everyone.
a great day.
Goodbye.